Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick. This is my first time seeing all these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 14, The Finger. Original air date is January 31st, 2002. Director is Richard J. Lewis. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker, Danny Cannon, and Carl Mendelsohn. We begin the episode, shock and amazement, with scenes of the Vegas Strip. So, Nick, what is our Vegas score for today's episode?
Pretty modest Vegas score of 27.
Okay.
You had a couple,
so like pretty middle of the road.
Scenes.
Yeah.
I think I like a lot of our episodes in that 20 to 30 range.
Yeah.
You know, you either usually like bottom out way lower or blow up way higher.
Yeah. So we have a few scenes of the Vegas Strip. We then go to a man entering a bank. He wants to withdraw $1 million. Must be nice. He slides the check over, and there's blood on the check or the withdrawal form.
Yeah, I didn't catch that the first time.
Yeah, so there's blood on the form, and he, the teller is like, I got to talk to my manager. There's some back and forth there because obviously, withdrawing $1 million is a big deal. And
he's sweating.
He's like antsy,
shaky.
Yeah. And then we have this kind of like montage of like security footage showing like how much time passes between him like initially coming in and him finally like getting the money and leaving. So he goes out to his car. He sees a cop car as he's getting into his car. Like there's like and this is much more noticeable on the second watch through, but there's like a solid like 2 to 3 seconds of him looking at this cop driving by, then getting into his car. He then speeds off just after seeing this police officer. He gets pulled over while he's like, pulled over or kind of boxed in, really, not even really pulled over, kind of like goes tries to go down an alley and is boxed in.
There's like another car and they never really like explained if that was also a police officer.
I don't think it was. I think it was just parked there. I think he went to go like down like a side street or an alley and there was just like a car parked there and he couldn't go further.
So listeners, spoiler alert, you gotta go watch the episode. We cannot talk about this episode without talking about
what happens.
The fact that he's in
on it from the very beginning.
In on it from the very beginning. This is all an act.
Yeah.
That's important. So like there are some good things. They really show like the blaring Las Vegas sun that day before he goes into the bank. And the second watch there, I was like, oh, that's why he's sweating. He made himself sweat
before he went in.
So that he would be nervous going in. And then it's like, and I was like, I think that's supposed to be a cop car because he was obviously trying to get arrested.
Yes.
And that's important to the rest of the storyline. So yeah, it's some of these things are really good. I did, when he gets pulled over, he's in alone by himself in the car. He hits the wheel and goes, damn it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was unnecessary. You're just doing that for the cameras. But I was like, so there's a few little places where they cheat us. But for the most part, a second watch through, I was like, all right, no glaring holes. Or at least I didn't find it. As we go through, if you find some, let me know. But
No, not really. But we'll see as I'm going through my notes. So his phone rings and then we realize that he has blood on his hands. So we've seen like the blood on the withdrawal form and now there's blood like on his hands as he's gripping the steering wheel. We go to Catherine and Grissom. Again, another episode full of walk and talks down the hallway. There are so many times that different people are walking down the hallway talking. So many of them, but
there's a 4-person walking talk in this episode. And that's all I could think about when I saw it. I was like, oh, Lauren must be over the moon.
There's so many walk and talks. So we start off with Grissom and Catherine doing a walk and talk, and they're talking about Mr. Logan. They're saying that, he hasn't said anything to anyone so far. And so they end up going into the room where he is. They're processing him. They ask him to strip. We go to credits. We return to Catherine taking pictures of Mr. Logan. Grissom is noting, like, they're not finding any blood on any of his clothing. The lawyer enters, very quickly leaves with Mr. Logan. It's basically like, hey, this is not above board. Taking my client. We're piecing out.
Spot the guest star on the lawyer.
Oh, all right. I didn't have this one. Okay. So
the actor's name is Al Sapienza?
Yes.
So,
Logan's... His credit in this episode is Logan's attorney.
Yep. So I've seen this guy in a million things.
Okay.
I think the most notable thing recently, I might actually have to look it up. It was 5
Oh,
episodes.
he's been in. I haven't seen it yet, but he's in Reacher, which is like probably one of the more recent things that he's been in. Is
Yep. So he's in like he's like a character. He's pretty young in this. So like he's in 5 episodes of Suits, which is a show that I really liked and watched a lot of episodes. He's in 10 episodes of The Sopranos, which I watched The Sopranos, but like I have not seen it since like the since it was on basically.
Yeah.
But if you go through, like you probably like everyone who's listening to this podcast, if you go look at his IMDb,
has seen him in something.
I guarantee you have watched 5 different shows that he's been in at least 3 episodes of.
Yeah, he's been in a lot. Oh my gosh, he is in so
and many 3
shows.
episodes of this, 4 episodes of this, 5 episodes of this, a couple episodes of that. So he definitely gets some showing, a few movies, you know, and it's like oh yeah, he's so familiar. I walked in, I went, I know that guy. I don't know his name. I don't know what I know him from, but I know that guy.
I know him. Yeah.
He's in the hit 2017 movie XXX Return of Xander Cage.
Oh, nice.
Starring Vin Diesel.
Nice.
Yep. And so he's in.
I mean, to be fair, one of our last Spot the Guest stars also starred with Vin Diesel in Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh, he's in the Big Short too, which is
okay. Yep.
A movie that I watched pretty much the whole movie through YouTube clips, not in chronological order.
Oh, okay, complicated.
Because it was like I watched a clip, it was really good. I watched another clip, it was really good, and like I basically had seen most of the show before I was like, maybe I should just watch this show.
Yeah, like maybe I should just watch the show instead of just watching random.
So then I went and watched it.
To be fair, I feel like that's how a lot of people watch shows on like TikTok.
Oh yeah.
Now, you know what I mean? They just see like clips of it.
A little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah, a little bit there. So
only Spot the Guest star for the episode, but
yeah, I was gonna say I don't have any Spot the Guest stars, so this is our one and only Spot the Guest star. I did have a moment where I was like, "Oh, Mr. Logan looks familiar," and then I did I think it's just because I've seen this episode enough times that he just looks familiar from this episode and not from anything else.
He kind of looked familiar. I think I checked, like, I clicked on his thing to be like, is he in anything I've seen? And I was kind of like, he wasn't like, I'll generally, if I do that, only look like the top, like 4 or 5 things I show on IMDb.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I don't know this guy.
Yeah. So Mr. Logan leaves with his lawyer, but he leaves his sunglasses behind. So Catherine grabs them to return them. She approaches him outside, like at his car, and it's kind of like, hey, like, you know, public service here, giving you your glasses back. He is immediately out of the gate, like kind of aggressive, and is like, get away from me. Like, you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me. And his phone rings, and he turns to Catherine, and he's like, oh, it's for you. So she takes the call, and she talks to someone obviously with a distorted voice, like a very like childlike, very high-pitched voice, and they're giving her all these instructions and saying like, hey, if you don't follow them, like Amanda's gonna die. Like, it's telling her like, hey, you have to like leave your piece in your bag and you have to get in the car and, you know, don't go to law enforcement. So she follows all the directions. Grissom, I had to laugh at this. Grissom like sees them drive off and almost has a like, oh, that's weird face.
Yeah, this is
She just told you that she had to go to her child's recital, and now you're seeing her drive away in the suspect's car. Like, she is driving the suspect's car away from your police headquarters, and instead of being like, Catherine, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? Like, is everything okay? You're just like, huh.
Yeah, not
that's
the level
weird.
Not the level of urgency.
No.
And also, like, the following scenes, I expected very different dialogue. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he's like following up on it, but like not urgently.
No.
But this whole scene is like really like a linchpin of this episode, both because there's a big leap of faith, I think, by the
Catherine
antagonist here.
Yes. Yeah, that she'll buy into it and
someone
play
will come
into the
out
story. Yeah.
with my sunglasses. Someone won't just like throw my sunglasses and walk away when the phone rings.
Right.
Right? Like that, but also like it's one of the biggest, I should have thought of that moments where it's like, why would this guy want this CSI person to go with him? Like, she didn't need to be part of this at all.
No.
She could have just let him give the sunglasses, walk away, and then have him deliver $1 million.
Right.
But he needed a person to be there. Yeah. And so, and a believable one. And so that is like really the biggest red flag for, you could have probably, you could have potentially figured out that he was in on this altogether. There was one point where I was like, "Oh, is this guy actually like the murderer?" It's much later in the episode, but then I was very quickly like, "No, I don't think so."
Yeah.
So they did a really good job faking me. I was like, "No, I don't think so. I don't.
Yeah.
That's a little far fetched."
Yeah.
So
It's
they did a good job.
I feel like they did a good job with this in this episode. We're with Grissom, he's with Greg Sanders. We learn that the blood on the banknote is like belongs to a female. And we learn from Jim Brass that like a code 5 has been put out on Mr. Logan's vehicle, which is basically like, hey, keep an eye out for it, but don't necessarily like get involved. Catherine is in. We're back with her and Mr. Logan. We learn that Amanda, the person on the phone call who death is on the line, which we learned pretty soon after, doesn't really matter. But at the time, we think her death is on the line, is his girlfriend, even though he's married and his wife does not know about said girlfriend. And Mr. Logan presents the finger that he found at the townhouse that he owns, that he like lets his girlfriend live at. And we learn that the quote unquote kidnapper wants $1 million in cash by the end of the day, or Amanda's dead. Like, that's one of the conditions that has been, or the main condition that has been presented. We then have a little bit of a throwback. We're with Sarah on a date with the rescue worker from the episode where they found the veteran who had turned to soup. I think
inside of the body bag.
Inside the body bag. I think for us, the title of the episode is Human Soup.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain is what we titled that episode. And they do like a throwback to that episode. They bring up the smell a little bit. Sarah then sees Catherine and Mr. Logan enter. She's trying to sort of gauge what's going on. Like, you can tell she's a little confused. They end up sitting at the counter. Catherine orders 2 glasses, one with ice, one without. And we then leave them for a very brief period of time. And we go to Grissom, Warwick, and Nick talking. Jim Brass enters. And we learn that Mrs. Logan isn't the victim. Like, they've been in contact with the wife. The wife is fine. She is not the female blood contributor to the banknote. We return to Catherine. She puts the finger in ice. Call comes in, gives them directions. They have like 1 hour to get there to make the drop. As Catherine's walking out, she leaves the finger with Sarah. Doesn't say anything to Sarah. Just is like, drops the glass on her table and then walks out of the restaurant with Mr. Logan.
It's probably worth mentioning the kidnapper's voice is like modulated.
Yes.
It's really high pitched.
It's very high pitched. Yes. So
has been in
the entire time
interaction as well.
Yeah. So we're back with Catherine and Logan in the car. She has him like mark the edges of the money with like the paint that she had been using on her daughter Lindsay to dress her up as like the moon. So it's this like glow in the dark sort of paint. They drive by a cop. This becomes important later, but they drive by a cop.
Probably the coolest looking old man cop.
He is a pretty cool looking old man cop.
This guy just looks like, if he pulled you over, he'd be like, just don't do it again. Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you.
But if you did it again, he'd be like, you're going to jail.
Yeah. Like, no nonsense. Like, no.
0 to 60.
Yeah.
Cool. Until you cross him twice.
And then, this is the walk and talk you were referencing. We have the entire team, minus Catherine, walking through the hallways together. Yeah. They're talking about like, hey, is this a kidnapping? Now they're starting to be like, wait a second, is this a kidnapping? Is that what the situation we're dealing with is? And they realize that they need to talk to the wife. Like, they have to go talk to the wife, kind of get her feel for what's going on here. We return to Catherine and Mr. Logan. They get to like the location. She like screeches the car off the road when they get to the location, which we learn later on why she does that. We see a person step out of a vehicle, kind of like in the dark, in shadow. They have a bunny mask on. They're carrying like a pretty large rifle, and they're demanding the briefcase. There's a little bit of a back and forth. Catherine wants the person to prove that Amanda is still alive. Mr. Logan doesn't seem to care too much about that and ends up handing over, which, spoiler alert, we know why he
Yep.
doesn't
I mean, this is
care
another
about
great.
that.
Yeah, this
But
is
at
a
the time,
good.
you just think it's an emotional, you just think he's
Yeah,
reacting emotionally to the situation, not that he already knows that Amanda is dead.
and he does a great job selling it. Like the
Yes,
dialogue is written really well. Like obviously they're all professional actors,
of
so
course
like
they are. Yeah, yeah.
they could be as good or as bad as they want in terms of embodying the character, but the the moments are really good, right? Like he has to run up the hill because he has to keep the story moving forward.
Yes.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like
Hmm.
because this was the plan, and there's almost like this is almost one of those times where like at the very end, I wish there was more of like a flashback here where he was just like take it, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
under
yeah,
his
yeah,
breath
yep.
or something,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And but it was fine that didn't happen, but
Yep.
it was good. And then there's one thing that's about to happen
Okay.
at the back end of the scene.
Yep.
Like they tell him where to go, and
Yes.
he knows exactly where this place is,
Yes.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah.
another like little red flag that he knows more than he's letting on to.
Yep. So Bunny Mask gives them, well, like, once it gets the briefcase, tells them to go to this like specific gas station, sort of like what sounds like in the middle of nowhere, and then we soon see like is in the middle of nowhere, gives them
Yep.
instructions to go there. So before we return to that, we go to Jim Brass and Nick there with Mrs. Logan. They have what I can only describe, especially the second watch through, like gratuitous shots of the kid eating in the car and just like spilling his food all over the car as he's eating in the car.
Yep.
I don't think, and listeners, let us know your thoughts on this. I think like on a first watch through, you probably don't pay that much attention to it. You're just like, oh yeah, it's like an
Yeah.
obnoxious little kid spilling his food all over the car, whatever. The second watch through, you're like, oh, they're very much trying to like show this to you in this scene.
It's very innocuous. I think the thing you key on is they're trying to like come up with a reason for the car having been cleaned.
Yeah, haven't been
They talk
detailed.
about detailing the
Yeah,
car,
yeah.
which turns out isn't the important piece of information here. It's the
No,
peanut
it's
butter
not.
sandwich.
Yes, it is not. So Mrs. Logan, though, not willing to talk to them. She's like, hey,
Reasonably.
yeah, again, we've said it countless times at this point in the podcast. Her lawyer said don't talk to the police, and she's listening to her lawyers, and that's what you should do, listeners. Like,
Yeah.
get lawyer console and then listen to what they say before
Yeah.
talking to law
I mean,
enforcement.
even in a
So
fully selfish way, like we don't know what she knows right now, right? So she might actually reason to believe that her husband did kill somebody, right? But
I mean,
like,
I think by the end of the episode, I mean, at this point, she doesn't know Amanda's dead.
correct. Yeah, I didn't know if they knew who was dead yet. They
I
haven't
don't,
put any pieces together
I
yet.
don't think she knew that, but she does know that she was with Amanda
Yeah.
and her husband walked in and then she left.
Yeah. And also that there's a very short list of people her husband would give a ransom for.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
And her son are fine. So it's like, okay, it's not me. It's not your son. So like who?
Yeah. So she's probably upset, but also like if she is going to like divorce him and take all his money, she definitely doesn't need somebody suing him and taking all his money for like
Wrongful death. Yes.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. Yeah. She
So
wants to
like,
protect her assets
yeah.
as well, most likely.
So so even at a really selfish level, like even if you think like, oh, why would you protect your husband when he's cheating on you or doing all these things? It's really, she's just looking out for herself
Yeah,
and
she's
her
looking
son,
yeah.
right? Who
Yes.
needs that money to be, wealthy and
Yeah.
have an easy ride in life for the rest
Yeah.
of his life.
Yeah. So we go back talking about the gas station. We are with Catherine and Mr. Logan. They come to this like broken down, abandoned gas station, middle of nowhere. They find the payphone. Mr. Logan's freaking out because he's expecting a call at the payphone, but it's like disconnected and he's like, oh no. But Catherine finds a map like underneath the payphone. We then go to Grissom and Nick there with Greg Sanders. This is where we learn that the blood from the finger matches the blood mark on the banknote. So it's the same person, blood on both of them. Nick wants to go get a warrant for the townhouse that Mr. Logan owns, and word comes in, lets them know that like, hey, the car has been spotted. Like this police officer noted this car because it was like so out of the ordinary to see this sort of car in that area, and then to see it go one way and then like 5 minutes later come back the same way is out of the ordinary. So that brings us to Grissom, Sarah, and Warwick. They're at the scene of the drop off. Sarah finds the paint and she's checking out treads. Warwick notes that Catherine dragged her heels at one point. Grissom finds helium, which is what is causing the voice distortion from the person making the phone calls. We have Nick arriving at the townhouse. He's surprised by a bird. And I will say, so Nick knows this about me. I've been involved in animal rescue since I was like 16 years old. That cage is way too small for that bird. And that's all I could think of every single time they had a scene with that bird. Was like, that is not an appropriate cage for that bird.
It's a big parakeet or whatever.
Cockatoo.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a beautiful cockatoo
Conger.
in a cage way too small for it. So just listeners, if you're thinking about getting a cockatoo, that is not the appropriate cage to get if you're going to get a cockatoo. But I'll get off that soapbox. So he's exploring the townhouse. He finds 2 wine glasses. They both have lipstick on them.
Yep.
Like, that's interesting. And then he spots blood on the bird. So he's like, wait a second. Like, something must have gone down here because the bird on its feathers had blood splatter. We're then with Catherine and Mr. Logan. They're at the abandoned site that we have to imagine is from the map that they found. They pull off a grate. Who do they find but Amanda floating in the water down below?
I was a little confused on the second watch through here about this whole map. Like, why not just end it at the phone booth? Like, why deliver a body at all?
Yeah.
Especially if your plan is to flee.
Yeah, I have that question in another part as well. So I think we can revisit
lip service
that
for the audience, really.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
And it's hard to think about how you move this story forward without it. But like,
yeah.
I was like, that was the one thing I was like, you could do it. Like you could understand. People make dumb decisions all the time. So maybe that's, you just have to accept the fact that this guy isn't as smart as he thinks he is. Right.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
I was kind of like, this is one thing I was like, this was a mistake.
Yeah.
You should have just left it at the broken phone booth.
Yeah. I have my similar moment to that. That'll come up in a little bit where I'm like,
okay.
Why? Like, how does this help you? Right? Like, how does this help what you're trying to accomplish here? So I have my own version of that pretty soon. We're with Grissom. He's with Doc Robbins. We learn that the finger was severed post-mortem. So it wasn't, she was alive and they cut off the finger as proof. Like, she was already dead. They cut off the finger. Catherine then calls Grissom and they have a little bit of an exchange and kind of a trying to catch each other up, but then realizing that they know the same information. The only thing that Grissom doesn't know is where Catherine is. We're then with Catherine and Warwick in the hallway because this is just a walk and talk episode, my friends. And we learned that I had another moment of like, is this legal? Warwick was like, oh yeah, we just had her like working with Greg Sanders in the lab all night. Is that not contaminating evidence to have like a 7-year-old playing around in a crime scene lab all night?
No, but she's family. Like, the rules don't apply.
Yeah, I guess they don't. Catherine and Grissom are then with Doc Robbins. We learn that the victim had been in the water for approximately 24 hours, but she has been dead 48 hours. So like it was like 24 hours dry dead and then 24 hours wet dead. We learn that the cause of death is due to blunt force trauma to the back of the head. And Doc Robbins pulls like stone or some sort of like material from the wound. Catherine walks out, runs into Mr. Logan in the hallway. He's like, I need to see her, this and that. And again, Catherine knows like they are not married. Like, this is a boyfriend-girlfriend sort of situation. And not to like belittle, partnerships. I'm not saying like you have to be married to have it be an important relationship. But legally, I just find it odd that she's like, yeah, all right, come on in.
Yeah. I think like
from a legal standpoint, I'm like, can you just give the okay for that? Like
she has a next of kin potentially out there somewhere.
Right.
Who might not be okay with this. But I think the only thing I have here is like, they have this sort of like Catherine's still like thinks of this person as somebody she just went through an ordeal with.
Yes.
And has a lot of sympathy for him.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But like, you'd almost be like, want Grissom to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, like, what are you doing?
Don't let him in here.
Yeah.
He was a murder suspect.
Yeah.
Less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah. And he comes in, he has some questions. They don't like, they give him pretty like high level answers. They don't really tell him all that much. We return to Nick at the townhouse. He's spraying the carpet. He finds a blood spot. Catherine enters. This is where we realize that someone, aka Amanda, hit their head on the table because it's like a marble table, and that's like where that piece of stone came from.
Yeah, the piece of stone was really like, it's relevant, but it's like there was no science.
There was no matchy-matchy. There was no science.
Oh, we did have the matchy-matchy on the severed finger, though.
We did have the matchy-matchy on the severed finger. That is true.
I did write down matchy-matchy.
Matchy-matchy on the severed finger. Catherine is like, okay, well, she was killed here. Then her finger is probably severed here. So she goes to look for the knives. She finds them all in the dishwasher. And they're trying to figure out why the wine glasses would be left out when the knives were washed. Like, isn't it strange that the killer very purposely put all the knives in the dishwasher and cleaned those, but just left the wine glasses sitting out, which we learned later why this is the case.
Yep.
We also realize pretty soon after that she's missing her shower liner. And that's probably how her body was transported out of the house, was wrapped up in a shower liner.
They made a really big deal of that. I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. Put any plastic trash bag. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, you put a body in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, the shower line is important in some
is.
ways because it comes back up. But it's also like, they try to make like discovering that there's no shower line in the shower.
Yeah, like, whoa. And it's
like, it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that exciting. Talking about the shower lining, we're with Warwick and Sarah. They're in the tunnels. They find the liner.
The sewers.
And they find the liner. We're then with Grissom and Jim Brass, another walk and talk. And this is where we learn that Amanda called Mrs. Logan. So, girlfriend has reached out to the wife. Then we go back to the liner. The liner is like the highlight of this episode at the moment. Warwick and Sarah are examining the liner. They find like a slice that probably occurred when Amanda's finger was cut off from her body. They then find a substance that is not blood on the side that wasn't touching her body. So like the outside of the liner. It's a grease stain. This brings us to Greg Sanders with Warwick and Sarah. We learn that stain is peanut butter. And Nick doesn't like peanut butter. What sort of life?
Oh, this is why Nick and I are so similar.
God, I love peanut butter. Peanut butter is so good.
I don't really like peanut butter.
Oh, gosh, I love peanut butter.
I love our Reese's peanut butter cup. That's about it.
Oh.
There's a lot of sugar in a Reese's peanut butter cup. It's like, I don't really like chocolate either.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you don't like chocolate, so.
Yeah, but yeah. I was like, oh yeah, good anti-peanut butter friends.
But, while Nick does not like peanut butter, it causes him to have a flashback of the son eating in the car a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which, for those of you in New England, probably would have been a fluffernutter sandwich. Because that's what I grew up on, was fluffernutters. But
it's probably why I don't like peanut butter anymore, is that I definitely
ate like so many
fluffernutter sandwiches from the ages like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
That's all the babysitters would make.
Yeah, always make fluffernutters. Which I didn't realize was like a regional thing until like adulthood. And then I was like, oh, this is only a like very like small part of the country that eats fluffernutters. So
if you don't know what it is, it's marshmallow fluff and peanut butter.
Yes, it's marshmallow.
Go to your store, buy some fluff. Fluff brand
Fluff
only.
is so good.
Buy some Jif.
I mean, it's just sugar. Like, it's not good for you. Don't think that this is like a healthy snack that we're telling you about. It is not, but it is delicious. So good.
Make yourself a fluffernutter.
Oh, fluffernutters are so good.
Pour it out for Amanda.
And this is not something I did like as a child. It was something I did as I got a little bit older. If you like toast the bread and then make a fluffernutter, adds a nice little layer to it. So that's me being fancy with my fluffernutters.
Then you can flambe your fluff and get like a nice little toasted meringue.
And then we learn that Mr. Logan just got the car detailed. Suspicious. Which brings us to Warwick, Sarah, and Nick examining the car. But don't worry, the like vacuuming doesn't necessarily get rid of the stain. It just pushes it down.
Yeah.
So they get some evidence of the peanut butter being in the car. We're then with Catherine Grissom and Jim Brass. They're with Mrs. Logan and
I
her
thought by the way
husband's attorney.
I thought by the way they were going to find blood in his car because there was a
Yeah,
hole
yeah.
in the
In the sheet.
friggin'
Yeah, in
in
the
the sheet.
liner. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, I thought they were looking for blood.
Nope, they find the peanut butter.
Of course,
And
the kid was in the car yesterday.
I know exactly. Like, you could be like, yeah, my
You
kid was
saw
eating
me.
peanut. Like, yeah, you saw him eating peanut butter and jelly in my car. Like, why is this a big to do?
Yeah.
So Mrs. Logan does admit to having drinks with Amanda, but she doesn't admit to kill her. She says, "I was just setting her straight." Like, basically letting her know that Roy wasn't gonna, leave me for her. He cares more about his money. Yada yada yada. And she also kind of drops the bombshell that Roy walked in as she was like having drinks with Amanda. So now he knows that the missus and the mistress know one another. So before she leaves, though, they want to check her hands for that glow in the dark paint that Catherine had Roy mark the edges of the money with. Her hands are clean. She's all good. But the lawyer has paint on his hands. And this is how does this help you, Mr. Logan? How does painting your lawyer as an accomplice help you? This was I didn't understand why you would want anything to be traced back to your lawyer.
They didn't really get into this until a little bit later when they talk about him he knew the case wouldn't fit into the thing, and so the lawyer had to take the money out.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, but how would we know that we'd put Pitt? Oh, maybe we thought the bank would do it. It's like, that's a little convoluted.
I feel like that was a stretch, I feel.
And I'm with you. It doesn't, your lawyer is the one person who can give you up. And
right.
He can break, I think, I'm 99% certain this, but I think he can actually break his client privilege to protect himself in a court of law.
I think so. Yeah, I would think so.
It's like you can't force him to use his client privilege against you. Right. But he can use it to defend himself.
Right. Yeah.
In a court of law.
Yeah. And then he's allowed to act in his own best interest.
That testimony would be inadmissible in your case, right?
Yeah.
But it would be but it would be admissible in his case. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. That's it's really there for dramatic effect, right?
Yeah, it is. Oh, for sure. And the lawyer immediately caves, which he should, but
also, did he not wash his hands in the last 24 hours?
I mean, it's grease paint, maybe. It's probably like a sort of paint that you probably have to use a certain type of soap to get off.
Is Catherine's daughter's face going to glow in the dark for the next 3 days?
So, as someone who used to work at a haunted house, a lot of times the best way to get that sort of paint off is dishwashing soap, which you might not use for washing your hands. Some people do, obviously, but
I do a lot.
You basically,
so that's why I was like,
but if you don't, if you just use standard hand soap, it doesn't have that degreasing agent in it, which is probably
also he's a lawyer. He doesn't clean his house. Doesn't do his own dishes.
Yeah.
His wife's probably doing it.
Yeah.
He's good. He mentions his secretary drove the guy's car.
Yeah, drove his car over. I was like, that must be a nice gig.
I was counting the number of accomplices in this whole story.
I don't think the secretary had anything.
The lawyer, by the way, is definitely an accomplice. They let him off the hook way too easily.
Yes, they did. Yeah, in this scene, he admits to wearing the mask. He admits to working for Mr. Logan. He admits to literally playing a part. Yes, I played a part. I did what my client told me to do, and I played a part. But he tries to deflect blame in the sense of I had no idea that Amanda was dead. That, I didn't know that part of it. But it's oh, but you were okay with playing a part with him illegally hiding his assets from his wife? Because he was I just thought he was trying to hide money from his wife because they were going through some problems, and when they went through the divorce.
Is also illegal.
That's what I'm that is illegal, sir. It's not as bad as killing someone. I agree. I would rather someone hide money than murder another human being, but it is still a crime to move your assets around or not declare your assets in a maritable dissolution.
Yeah. And you're not employee-client privilege doesn't give you the authority to do illegal things for your client or
no.
To them. It just means that if he tells you he did something illegal, you don't have to tell anyone.
Right.
Or you can't really.
Yeah.
But if you participate in them, then you are a co-conspirator.
Yeah. Yeah, we learn that the money is supposedly in a locker at a country club. Catherine and Jim Brass go to Logan's room of the Tangiers, but, oh, look at that. totally empty. And Catherine is understandably very upset by being duped by him. Like, she legitimately believed him and legitimately thought that he was, like, lost his girlfriend and was, like, going through this turmoil when, in fact, he had been orchestrating this the entire time. We have a very short scene with Grissom opening the locker. Locker is empty. We return to the team. They're discussing the case. This is where we have basically what we just talked about in this episode, but we have a pretty thorough walkthrough of like every step of the crime. Like, okay, he killed her. Okay, he waited. Okay, he severed the finger. Okay, he wrapped her up in the liner. Okay, he dumped her in the grate. Okay, he talked to his lawyer. Okay, he, like it guides you through the entire. It's like a 3 to 4 minute guide through of the entire episode.
It's a classic, just for all you audience members there who aren't following along.
Yeah, just in case you missed it, here's him purposely getting pulled over. Here's him purposely looking anxious at the bank. Here's him leaving his glasses behind so that like someone, I mean, it ends up being Catherine, but like someone from the team has to get his glasses and return them to him. The reason the wine glasses were left out was because he wanted to frame his wife. And that was a piece of evidence against his wife. So he left that evidence there because it indicted his wife in the death of Amanda, where he would be clear. So as they're talking through this, they bring us through this entire recap of the episode. We then have Catherine's cell phone ring. She answers it. It's that same officer. And lo and behold, this car left a mark on him. So when he noticed the car again, it piqued his interest. And especially because Mr. Logan was speeding, which there's a podcast I listen to that they discuss like weird news stories. And one of the things that this is all I could think of as soon as this happened in this episode, is, like if you have a warrant out for your arrest, or you're transporting drugs, or like you're doing something illegal, drive the speed limit. What are you doing? Just drive the speed limit.
I'm already breaking the law once. Why would I follow it?
Oh my gosh. So ridiculous. So I don't think this was part of his plan. I think he was just being an arrogant jerk, and this officer caught on to him and pulled him over. So they obviously take him into custody. Catherine visits him in jail. He's sort of brushing the entire situation off. He's like, oh, we could have ran off together. And Catherine's like, yeah, right, because you're down a mistress. And he was just kind of like, well, like, what's one more lie, right? Like, I've told enough lies. Like, what's one more lie? And Catherine's retort is, well, tell that to your son.
Well, the good news for his son is that his murderous father will spend the rest of his life in jail. And his mother will get all of the money to spend and whisk them away.
Yep. So that is the end of today's episode. So, Nick, what did you think about today's episode?
I actually think this might be my favorite episode of the season so far.
Oh, okay.
I think...
Okay.
I took very few notes. I felt like I was really gripped, I think, the first time through the episode.
Yeah.
And the second time through wasn't particularly bad or anything. Didn't really bring it down. It was a very different experience because in the second time through watching it now I'm like watching it to find all these little things out.
Yeah.
There was a point where I was like, oh wow, the first half of this episode was really good, but now it's really boring. But then it got good again.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like there was a little, so it has its problems. I was trying to remember after this episode, I was like, what was my favorite episode last season? And I was like, would this compare? Like, how does this compare to that episode? And which I believe was the one with the serial killer fitness lady.
Yes, that was both of our favorite episode.
Yeah, and I was like, it's been too long to maybe recall.
Who is on NCIS? And I did a reverse spot the guest star for Nick. I like took a picture of my TV of her on NCIS, and I texted it to Nick, and I was like, "Look who's on NCIS."
She's not like a main character. She was just
no. She's like in a few episodes.
That's the spot the guest star for NCIS.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, she was this person on.
Yep.
CSI. Yeah, so it's like I think this is my favorite episode of this season. I don't think I like it more than my favorite episode of last season.
Fair.
but I feel like I'd have to watch them back to back. So I think that maybe after we get like 3 or 4 seasons under our belt, I'll do a little marathon and watch each favorite
Favorite
episode
episode,
and
yeah,
rank
yeah,
them or
yeah, and
something. I
then
think that
rate
would be
them.
really fun.
Yeah, yeah, that could be a fun
I will.
exercise.
I will not be ranking the worst episodes. The
No,
worst
oh
episode is
gosh, no,
still
I
the
wouldn't, I
bar.
wouldn't, I wouldn't
It's
do
still
that
the
to you.
airplane episode.
Yeah, 100%. It's always gonna be the airplane
But we
episode.
had some bad ones this season too.
Yeah, we have. So for me, I didn't remember liking this episode. Like I was like, oh man, this episode. But I have to say, in watching it this go around, as you sort of mentioned in your review, it goes by quick. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I remember the first watch through, I paused it at one point. I think I had to let the dogs out, and I looked to see how much was left of the episode, and there was only like 10 minutes left, and I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
really? Like I've already gotten through like 30 minutes of this episode. Like I didn't realize like that much time had passed. So I feel like, generally speaking, it moves along well. I think because I do remember that he was the one who killed his girlfriend, like
Yeah.
that takes away from it a bit.
Can't open that present twice.
Yeah, you can't. And you know, some of these episodes I haven't seen as many times, so I sometimes like forget exactly what happened. But this one I was like, oh right, no, he coordinated. Like I just knew. I was like, he coordinated this from the very beginning. So, but that's not the fault of the episode. That is the fault of me watching the show too often. And so I'm not gonna like have that be a strike against this episode, because that is a me problem and not an episode problem. But I think it moved along well. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of one storyline episodes, but everyone was involved. Everyone played a part.
Yeah.
Obviously,
even
like Catherine,
Rourke has more time in this episode than he said in the last
yes,
3.
Rourke finally wasn't just like totally outcast to the fringes here.
And he still didn't have. There was very little CSI going on the whole episode.
There wasn't much CSI going on, but
we didn't talk about Catherine and the reverse CSI stuff very much, where she like left the tire tracks when she stopped.
Oh no, I did. I joked about that a little bit,
but
yeah,
like we didn't like dwell on it.
No,
like,
we didn't dwell.
But
on
that
it.
was
That's
cool
true.
to see it in like reverse as well. Right?
Yes, it was. Yes, I agree entirely. I think this was a good. And again, I think I said this on an episode not that long ago. Like I've always liked Catherine, but I think in this watch through of it, I have a much better appreciation for Catherine than I've ever had watching CSI before. And I think this is another like solid Catherine
good character in this episode.
Yeah,
you know, you get Sarah going on a date.
Yeah.
Catherine's daughter, whose name I always forget.
Lindsay.
Lindsay is in the episode.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And all I can think about is the Child Protective Service storyline that seemed to have ephemerally disappeared.
Yeah.
Where like she missed her daughter's, so she missed her daughter's recital because of work.
Yeah, but it's fine.
But for the most reasonable point, though, like you know what I mean? Like yeah, she was basically kidnapped.
Yeah, she was abducted.
For
all intents and purposes, she was abducted. So.
And so, but you also had like Warwick looking out for her, the whole thing where like they kind of knew when Sarah was on a date, like who knew, who didn't know. Like, they found good opportunities for it. So, but I would say it's probably very accurate to characterize this episode as a much better first watch through than rewatch.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, yes. I don't think that
it doesn't have the same
put this as number one rewatchability.
No.
You know, which some episodes are just like that. They're just, I feel like when you watch them the second time, you're like, I enjoyed watching this episode the second time. One day later, as much as I enjoyed watching it yesterday.
Yeah, not this
the
one.
First time.
But again, I don't think it's a slight against the episode that's true. It's just the nature of the episode. Yes. Like it's enjoyable when you don't know what to look for, and then it's fun. Its
excitement is in the surprise and the discovery.
Yes,
not in the drama and the tension, which is usually the thing that makes it rewatchable.
Yeah. So, well, we're gonna take a little bit of a different turn next week as we review season 2 episode 15, Burden of Proof. In the meantime, you can find us on Patreon. I am thinking, let me know, listeners, I'm thinking that I might record, because we definitely need to get bonus content up on our Patreon. I'm thinking that I might do like quick reviews or I don't know if reviews is the right word, but quick thoughts on the new CSI episodes that are coming out. So the CSI Las Vegas episodes that are coming out. So let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in hearing. I might end up putting that together as something that'll be coming back in a few weeks.
It could be a time capsule for 5 years from now when we get to those episodes. Like you could here, Nick, I have my first reaction.
Yeah, here's my first reaction to them. So, well, let us know, listeners. I'll be curious. You can also find us on Facebook at Who Are You, a CSI podcast. We are also on Twitter /X, Instagram, and Threads at Who Are You, CSI pod. You can also email us at whoareyouscipod@gmail.com. But otherwise, we will talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.